This legislation simply requires colleges and universities to share information with mothers about the rights and resources available to help carry their baby to term. Why would anyone, why would even a Democrat oppose giving mothers information about the rights and resources available to them? Because they have become the party of abortion. They have become the party of death. But we know that many college-aged women are presented only with the option of abortion if the pregnancy was unplanned. A mother may face the pressure from the pro-death abortion industry, otherwise known as the Democrat Party, forcing her to decide between ending the child's life or reaching her academic and professional goals. We know that this is a false choice that disguises the lasting consequences of abortion, both for the mother and for the child. And this legislation does include important data on the negative impacts that abortion has on the mother's mental and physical health. Here's the truth. Abortion is harmful to babies and to mothers. As the bill explains, women who receive abortion are 34% more likely to develop anxiety disorders, 37% more likely to develop depression, and 115% more likely to develop suicidal behavior. The data proves that the mission of the overall bill to support mothers matters not only for the sake of the child, but also for the well-being of the mother.
If the technology existed, I really truly believe the GOP would put tethers on the ovaries of women around our country. The type of overreach and control, this bill literally would target and bully our daughters on college campuses. This is all while the Republican majority does nothing to stop the unbelievable crisis we have with infant mortality, Black maternal health, and so much more. We have to beg to fund WIC in this chamber. WIC, that specifically supports pregnant women. Women are already forced to work harder just to make ends meet and put food on the table for their families. Yet again, though, we're going to target them. We're going to sit there and pretend that this is to help them. What a waste of time. What a waste of time. Just even some of the colleagues of my folks here continue to say this is a waste of time. I mean, Representative Niels said, quote, "I don't think we have the will to impeach Joe Biden." Just for the record, impeachment isn't something you have a will to do. It's something you have to have evidence to do. Which brings me to next, you heard about Rep. Don Bacon, who said, when the staff tells you that they can't identify a particular crime, there's a problem. That's a problem. I mean, you can go on and on.
Well, I have a message for these protesters. When the tyrants of Tehran, who hang gays from cranes and murder women for not covering their hair, are praising, promoting, and funding you, you have officially become Iran's useful idiots. Some of these protesters, it's amazing, and don't be fooled when the blood libels against the Jewish state come from people who wear fancy silk robes and speak in lofty tones about law and justice. Here's a case in point. The prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has shamefully accused Israel of deliberately starving the people of Gaza. This is utter, complete nonsense. It's a complete fabrication.
This legislation ends the flow of tax subsidies to any U.S. nonprofit that has clearly violated its tax-exempt status by providing material support to terrorist organizations.
This is going to be my third time voting against this bill because I don't care who the President of the United States is. This is a dangerous and an unconstitutional bill that would allow unchecked power to target nonprofit organizations as political enemies and shut them down without due process. If you really truly cared about the hostages or Americans being held captive, The stop tax penalties for hostages is already here as a standalone bill that passed out of the Senate. So let's not make it about that. This legislation is part of a broader assault on our civil liberties, including our right to dissent in our country. It aims to criminalize the very social justice movements fighting for justice at peace here at home as well as abroad. Make no mistake, this bill is not only, and I constantly have said this to folks, this is not just about Palestinian human rights advocacy organizations. This is about the NAACP, the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, folks that have been trying to make it safe for our kids to go to school away from gun crisis and violence. I really want to talk about what makes the lives of our residents difficult every single day, like greedy corporations raising prices to pay their executives and shareholders, polluters that literally treat communities in my district like poisoning them as the cost of doing business, politicians that put their own interests before the residents, many of which in this committee, that own stocks in war weapon manufacturing. So when we do have to vote yes, or my colleagues have to get up on the floor and vote for more bombs and weapons in other countries, they actually make money, personal money. Their stock values go up. Look it up. People like our disgraced, twice impeached president, who represents the worst of the unchecked American capitalism, who, as we speak, is sitting in a courtroom as the first ever American president to face criminal prosecution. Here we go again, sending $17.6 billion U.S. tax dollars with no conditions attached to Netanyahu's extremist government to drop more bombs on innocent Palestinians. The Israeli government has already killed 27,000 people, 11,500 of them were children. I'm tired of my colleagues coming to me whispering, I don't really like Netanyahu. Well, then why are we sending him billions of dollars with no conditions? He literally is telling us over and over again what his intention is. I'm tired of my colleagues coming and whispering to me, Rashida, I support two-state solution. Great. Then send money that conditions for a two-state solution, because Netanyahu has over and over again told us he never wants to see a Palestinian state. So I'm tired. I oppose Netanyahu's war crimes and want him gone too. But many of my colleagues that continue to tell me that do not want to condition the aid. They give it to a genocidal maniac. My message to my colleagues is simple. If you don't support Netanyahu, if you're disgusted by the countless videos of lifeless children pulled out of the rubble, if you actually believe in upholding human rights and international law, vote no on a blank check to Netanyahu's genocide.
Gentlelady's time's expired.
Thank you. You know, when we hear the headline, a 20-year-old young man with access to an assault weapon commits an act of mass violence, I mean, we've heard this before, over and over again. But the unfortunate thing is that my residents don't get a committee hearing. We have not had one committee hearing about the over 260 mass shootings that we've had, killing hundreds of people, injuring hundreds, changing their lives forever. And don't get me wrong, to many of my colleagues, I mean, I watched, and even the pool of blood, the screams, it was horrific. But it made me think about the images I saw after mass shootings at schools, grocery stores. I mean, I think of Buffalo, New York at a supermarket where a racist gunman killed 10 shoppers with an AR. In El Paso, AK-47 style assault rifle killed 22. In Florida, in Parkland, Florida, 17 students and teachers murdered, again with an AR. In Pittsburgh, at a place of faith, Tree of Life Synagogue, 11 murdered. And don't get me about Newton, Connecticut, which still breaks my heart. 26 murdered, including 20 elementary school children. This year in Michigan, we've had, Mr. Chair, 2 mass shootings. 21 shot in Detroit. One of the most horrific shootings we've seen. 2 killed at a splash pad in Rochester Hills, Michigan. 8 shot there. Again, an assault weapon used. But the difference here is the former president gets a hearing in his attempt to assassinate, but our residents don't get a hearing about mass shootings, about gun violence in our country. You know, Mr. Chair, I ask this wholeheartedly. You know, they don't have Secret Service to protect them. They don't. I don't have these mass agencies protecting our kids in the schools or the supermarket, movie theaters, or going to a block party in Detroit. I don't have that. We don't have that. But I can't believe we're just going to focus on that and not the fact that we're hearing yet again in the headlines a 20-year-old young man having access to an assault weapon, a weapon of war many of my veterans say they have to be trained to use. But he can get it, wasn't safely stored by the parent, grabbing that gun, and innocent lives were lost. I do have really just a question, and it is really a yes or no, and I promise, like, you should know this, but did you all make more money in this year than you, I mean, like in 2023 than you did in 2022? Like profit. Did you make more money, Joyner? Did you guys make more money? Are your profits going up, yes or no? Is it?
In 2024, my profits are going down from 23.
It's going down right now?
Yeah.
You're not making any money?
No, we are making money. I'm just
But
saying if
it's
you're
down
talking
from
about the growth.
2023?
Yes.
Interesting. How about you, Kastner? Katzner, is that how you say it?
Yes. So the Cigna Group's profits, as we report, did increase from 22 into 23 and for the first quarter of 24.
So you're doing good. Okay, how about you?
Yes, OptumRx earnings increased from 22 to 23.
By a lot? Is it like doing really well? I don't understand how you're making money and making profit if you're trying to lower costs on our residents. I'm just confused how you can do both. I know my colleagues are not going to get into it, but how do you do both when you got to be making money from somewhere? If this bill claims to support our daughters, let's talk about programs that truly support our daughters. Life-saving programs that help women after a baby has been born is getting cut left and right. The legislation creates no new rights, no new protections under Title IX, no protections from discrimination or information on how to file a federal civil rights claim. Only requirement, literally, that our daughters on college campuses be targeted and shamed. It's exactly what it is. I represent, Madam Speaker, some of the most struggling communities, and I have had so many of our mothers, one of which came to my office in tears because her early childhood program in her neighborhood was cut. Because she said, that's the place that my children could get fed twice a day. This is what we've become. We want to bully and shame women in our country. I am proud to support our women in our country, and I'm going to be so proud to be able to vote no on this extremist, anti-women legislation. Let's not gaslight the American
Gentlewoman's
people.
time
We
has
know
expired.
exactly what you're trying to do. You're trying to control us.
Gentlewoman's
and
time
it's
has
not gonna
expired.
happen.
Gentlewoman's time has expired.
It's so exhausting. This is really incredibly exhausting, and I can't imagine our residents sitting at home. I still, every time I look up and I see our former chairman, forever chairman, Elijah Cummings, our first ever hearing in this room was about the high cost of insulin. I think one of the first witnesses was a mother of twins who had to ration her insulin and lost a child because she couldn't afford it. I still remember our previous chairwoman who really did a phenomenal job continuing to talk about the opioid crisis and how the Sadler family was part of a criminal scheme to increase addiction among family members, people just literally losing their family members because of profit, because of folks that were literally drug dealers in suits. All of that to say is this House Oversight Committee, from our committee hearings on the Postal Service, which really matters to our constituents, the high cost of prescription drugs, the housing issues, the number of struggles and challenges of everyday Americans. And I say this sincerely. I know you all do, but sincerely, because what a waste of time. Former Oversight Chair Darrell Issa, who serves on the Judiciary Committee now, said, I think he goes on and says, there's no clear sense of where the impeachment inquiry is going. It goes on and on. I mean, look, you all, this is an incredibly important committee. We could be doing some phenomenal things and holding currently the Biden administration a number of issues. Like, I want to know about the American Rescue dollars and where that money is being used. Is it being used towards public health? Is it being used towards the crisis that continues to happen in many of our families being impacted by long COVID symptoms? I mean, these are things that we could be doing right now in this chamber. We're not. We're doing this over and over again, and it's a waste of time. I literally, every time I talk to my constituents about this, they don't bring this up. They said, God, when is this going to be over with? I tell them, my colleagues do not know how to lead the campaigning at the steps of the Capitol. When we come in here, we have to literally put that aside and work for our constituents. Work on getting some sort of understanding where we can prioritize making sure that we have access to clean water. What is going on with the lead abatement program within the administration? Talking about the specific challenges that we continue to see in our healthcare system. All of that. Again, we can hold the Biden administration together, Mr. Chairman, on a number of issues we can see eye to eye on, and saying we need to use this committee to open it up to be the watchdog committee that we are. Instead, we really sincerely are wasting the time of the American people doing this. This is awful. For them to see us going back and forth like this, it's so disenchanting for them. And you all wonder why the numbers out there of favorability towards Congress is so low. They really have no faith in us because of this. This is the kind of stuff we do. When literally my folks are literally fighting for the right to breathe clean air and to fight to sit there and figure out how they're going to afford asthma inhalers. Yet we're here wasting the people's time.
Will the gentlelady yield?
Yes, Mr. Chair. And I say this out of somebody that's a social worker at heart. We could do so many things in bipartisan in this committee. I know it. And I think we're right now really missing out an opportunity to do that. We really are.
Ms. Tlaib,
I yield to Mr.
Well, it's for a question I just wanted to ask you, because you have had tremendous success in trying to clean up dirty water across America. We can actually get things done, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, I know my colleague on the other side, we all have a crisis of the clean water crisis. We could literally bring in folks in the EPA, bring folks into this chamber right now and ask, where is the Biden administration on the development of their lead abatement initiative? These are the things that I think very much many of my mayors, my local electeds, many of the state folks are asking, what can we do as members of Congress to basically have more transparency in where the priorities are? But again, I really say this sincerely to all of you. We can do better. We deserve to do better. I remember Chairman Cummings constantly reminding us that we can be better.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Before I recognize Representative Fry, for what purpose does Representative McClain seek recognition?
I'd like to enter something in the record. My friends on the other side of the aisle are desperately trying to deflect from the Biden family peddling scheme by attacking President Trump and his family.
For 5 minutes?
I would like to enter into the record an article. Actually, Jared Kushner and Hunter Biden are nothing alike, and here are the facts. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Representative Fry for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my colleagues know where I'm going to go with this because I consistently try to get them recentered. I'm really sick and tired of us not leaving the campaigning at the Capitol steps. This is just another committee hearing where we're bringing campaign activity into this chamber and not being honest with the American people. This is not what our residents sent us to Washington to work on. Mr. Chair, earlier this year, the committee's own Democratic staff, produced a report showing that Trump received more than $7.8 million in unconstitutional payments from foreign governments while he was commander-in-chief. This is important because we talk about, influence in our elections, gerrymandering in our districts, corrupting our democracy, and this outside influence, but it's happening right here on our soil, and it happened on our soil by a sitting president. The report was based on a limited set of documents produced by his own accounting firm, Mazars, and even though, however, literally, it said $7.8 million in unconstitutional payments from foreign governments while he was our commander-in-chief. However, before the committee could receive any more documents related to Russia, Chairman Comer and the forever impeached president's lawyers stopped the production of any further documents. And Professor Snyder, I mean, I don't know if you've been following it. You know, it's something that I know our ranking member Raskin heard me talk about this all the time. I always call him my professor about the emoluments calls and how dangerous and how connected it is of just even the subject matter of what we're talking about today. But do you think, if the committee were interested in understanding the threats of political warfare facing the United States, as well as the influence of peddling directed by foreign governments against our country, shouldn't it demand that the accounting firm and the forever impeached president produce all those payments received by the president from foreign governments?
I would have certainly have thought so, since every serious scholarly treatment and every also document that I've read from the Chinese side stresses the importance of such financial relationships in recruitment and long distance management.
I agree, and yet instead, the current committee have worked to help the forever impeached president bury the evidence and keep the facts from the American people. I think it's incredibly dangerous. And lastly, just because it really made me angry, and I think it makes my constituents angry, but I'm going to submit for the record this article called "Air Force Crew Made an Odd Stop on a Routine Trip, Trump's Scottish Resort." Can I submit it for the record?
Without objection.
Yeah. This one had me stuck really, really with me, and it just is so blatant. The article details how military crews flying supplies to and from the Middle East were redirected from their usual overnight stops at the U.S. military bases in Europe to a small commercial airport in Scotland outside then President Trump's Turnberry Golf Resort, where they stayed with our tax dollars. This, despite the fact that both refueling and the cost of overnight food and lodging for the crew were less expensive at established, infrequently used U.S. military bases where they typically stopped. Surprise, surprise for all my committee staff, colleagues here. Trump's resort, which lost $4.5 million in 2017, saw all of a sudden, whoopee, an increase of $3 million in profits in 2018. Shameful. It is disgusting. And it's just these kinds of things of pay to play. I mean, having literally a sitting president run his organization, his business out of the White House is equally as dangerous to our democracy and the influence on our country. This is something that I hope my colleagues really take seriously, because I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican, no one ever should sit there in the White House, out of the Oval Office, running a business to profit themselves. It is unconstitutional and, again, demands that kind of accountability, and that's what I want this committee to address. Thank you so much. I yield. Director, I know you got asked about this, and I think it's important, though, for us to hear this. But how difficult is your job when there's such easy access to assault weapons in the streets?
I think the job of a Secret Service agent and officer is incredibly difficult. I think the environment we deal with every day and the dynamics of the threat environment is incredibly difficult. These are brave men and women who put their lives on the line, and a day like we had on July 13th is a day that no one in my agency ever wants to have as their responsibility. It is an incredibly difficult job.
Yeah, I immediately thought of the children in the audience. I mean, when you think about going to a rally with your family, again, their lives are forever changed. The incident are never isolated. I really believe these incidents are never isolated. And I know Detroit Free Press had reported that the 20-year-old Pennsylvania shooter looked up the 2021 Oxford High School shooting in Michigan. Can you comment on what information this shooter was looking up in regarding the tragedy of Oxford High School, where it took 4 of our high school youth there?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to. The FBI has those details.
So you can't even tell us, I mean, was he looking at the type of weapon? How many?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have those details.
Do you have, I mean, did they share that with you, though?
I don't have the full content of what his searches were. I think that they are still in the process of examining all of his devices.
Okay. Again, the impact, I want to be really serious about this. The impact on our families is more than just this political rally, Mr. Chair. We have to talk about this, even if we're in disagreement. Let's talk about it, because I've seen statistics that show that we could be saving lives now if we ban these weapons of war from being able to buy it at the local store down the street. I mean, we just can't continue to allow this to happen. And unfortunately, my residents are not former presidents of the United States. They don't get a hearing. They don't get Secret Service, any of that. And even among those that are expressing the failed in the system, they just deserve better. They truly do. Thank you, and I yield. Thank you, Chairman Comer. Chairman, I do want to help support all the text messages you got. I actually got letters of independent pharmacists who say they do not have great relationships with their PBM. One is from independent pharmacists in Flint, Michigan, another who owns a number of independent pharmacies in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan.
Without objection, so ordered.
Each of you have noticed, have said that you have business plans or processes and methods in place to help lower cost for our residents. Yet it has been well documented there has been a huge reduction of pharmacies in many vulnerable areas. One of the things that I know, are of course the DIR fees and reimbursement. But one of the things in the report, and I know you all saw it, but in there, it talks about the post-sale adjustments. Get this, Chairwoman, and Chairwoman McLean and I come from the same state, but check this out. Post-sale adjustments can require a pharmacy to often blindly make payments of hundreds of thousands of dollars back to PBMs months after the relevant prescriptions are sold. So this is like one of my residents going in and they buy $5 worth, I don't know, dairy products or something like that, like I think I used the example of a gallon of milk. Goes in, buys a gallon of milk, later sees a charge of $5 extra, like after they left the grocery store. So quoted in the report, it says we're often talking about PBMs charging hundreds of thousands of dollars. These are not small fees though. So the FTC report noted that one of the metrics PBMs often use is, it's really interesting, deciding whether or not to charge pharmacies retroactive fees. These are, again, they left, they paid for it, you all came back and charged them more. It's crazy. Is adherence to medication, I kid you not, Chairwoman. It says, but there's many reasons. So they say that basically the post-sale adjustment is based on whether or not like they're punishing them because a patient is unable to afford their medication, or when the patient cannot pick up the medication on time, that they have an unpredictable work schedule or something, whatever it is. It's some weird little factor you guys are putting in reasons that might all of a sudden say, well, we got a post-sale adjustment. How many of you use post-sale adjustments? Mark, you guys use post-sale adjustments?
No, that program discontinued in 2023.
How about you, Katzner?
Congresswoman, we don't engage in clawbacks.
Yeah, how about you?
OptumRx does not do clawbacks or charge DIR fees.
So what is this thing about you all doing the thing about using to determine whether or not to charge pharmacies, whether or not how removing like the patient adherence? How many of you use that factor? That the patient adheres, how many of you? Katzner, you look like you're interested in this question.
So, Congresswoman, the DIR program expired last year, so that's not
but do you at all determine post-sale adjustments or anything? You don't do any of that anymore?
We don't engage in clawbacks.
Okay, you call clawbacks. Is that what you guys call clawbacks? Post-sale, like you add, so if any of your independent pharmacies, they walk out and you guys don't go back and say, oops, you owe another $10? None of you do that?
That's not a practice that we're engaged in.
Okay. What is this about a factor using a patient adherence from factors being used to determine whether or not, like, what is that about? Like, the patient is using it. I'm being serious, you guys. This is something in the FTC report, so I'm just curious. Did you guys stop it because they caught you, or what's going on here, or you guys changed the name of it?
So that was the DIR program was actually removed from, it was a government decision. It wasn't a decision that
we forced you guys to do it?
It was enacted by
Yeah, we forced you to do it. What else should we be forcing you guys to do? Because it's still, I'm being serious. You know that you're in the practice, if you're making profits continually, it's not reducing the cost on our residents. Something's wrong. And when I hear from independent pharmacies, I mean, you hear this. I had one in my district, Chairwoman, last thing, he paid like $100 or something right out of pocket. He never got reimbursed for it, ever. He said, because again, whatever you all are doing, it's putting them out of business. And guess what? That means less access to our residents that really depend on independent pharmacies. But again, it sounds like we need to do some forcing them to act in good faith. Sounds like we doing the DRI. If we stop those programs, what else do we need to stop so they can treat everybody fairly and not monopolize as well? I know you guys do that, and you don't offer everybody the same service, and that's ridiculous. With that, I yield.